Hi everyone, I'm Rincey and this is Rincey Reads. Today I'm going to be talking about Empire of AI by Karen Hao. This is a nonfiction book that came out this year. Karen Hao is a journalist and she has been working since 2019 in covering basically AI and specifically like OpenAI as a company. And this is kind of a culmination of all of her research and investigations into this company specifically. So OpenAI started out as a nonprofit company, actually, in case you weren't aware of that. And Sam Altman, who is the CEO of OpenAI, made a lot of like significant claims about OpenAI and what it was capable of and what its goals were, what its dreams were basically for this thing to do. And Karen Hao started to report on this and basically very quickly realized that like there were conflicts between what was being said of the purpose behind the company, what it was doing, what it would try to do, how it was doing it, all of this stuff, and like what was possible and like the resources required to do those things and the manpower required to do those things and all that stuff. And so she began like a really significant deep dive into both the company as well as like people who used to work there and doing research into AI just in general and what's required of it and what it's capable of and all of these different things. And the title of this book, Empire of AI, basically comes down to the fact that Hao is making a connection between the way empires ran slash do run and what these massive tech companies are doing with AI. The basic idea being that empires tend to drain the resources of other people and places in order to build themselves up. And that's basically what AI and AI companies or companies utilizing AI are doing currently in this day and age. So this is a book that I've been interested in picking up for a while. I got this from my library and I'm very happy that I read it. I really enjoyed this book. I will say, like off the bat, I am someone who is very like anti-AI in its current iteration and how it's being used and abused and all of these different things. Like I very much fall into the side of the spectrum of like, I don't want AI in anything right now. I see like the potential of what good it can be used for, but I think that in the way that it's currently being utilized and pushed out into the world, it's not good and it's harmful and things like that. And so I do think that like my bias will read into how I interpreted this book. And so Karen Hao like basically came across my like Instagram feed a lot after around the time that this book was coming out because I fall on that side of the algorithm. And so there was a lot that she was saying that I thought was just like really insightful, especially with that parallel between empires and these current companies and the way that they are utilizing resources. Like even before I picked up this book, like I knew that running AI data centers requires a lot of energy and water, and they are taking those resources from local communities. A lot of times they are opening up major data centers behind like other named companies, so that way you're not aware like that it's Meta or Google or OpenAI opening up these major data centers that are sucking up resources. You know, I see the reports about how everyone's electricity prices are going up because of AI data centers. And, you know, I'd seen the reports about even how sometimes people are claiming that AI is doing something when it's really just people doing the things, but these are people in third world countries that are being paid pennies to do these things. Karen Hao goes into how also people in these like third world countries are being paid pennies to do things like moderation, and they're having to see like really horrific things on a pretty regular basis, and how like these AI and tech companies are basically taking advantage of countries that are going through turmoil in order to pay people pennies to do this horrific work. Like to me, this is like such a great piece of like journalistic nonfiction. I think that if you're someone who enjoys books, you know, that are journalistic nonfiction in general, but I'd like to me this, while I was reading it, it gave me a similar vibe of like Bad Blood, not so much in the like Bad Blood has like this true crimey angle to it. The parallel to me is more about how both of those are done by really strong journalists who did their research and did a lot of digging, talked to a lot of people, got people to be open and honest with them in ways that I don't think they probably would have otherwise, things along those lines. So it feels like you're getting a lot of information in this book that is normally not available to the public. How travels to and talks to people from other countries. She talks to former employees. She gets access to documents and things like that that are distributed by all of these different Silicon Valley executives that the general public probably wouldn't have been aware of otherwise. And I just think it's like so well done. It's one of those books that I think really captures a moment in time and feels very relevant to the now. And it'll be really interesting to see sort of like, depending on how things go, like how these stories develop, you're seeing, or at least I'm seeing, I should say, more cities sort of fight back about data centers being built in their areas. I just saw something recently about like the city of Indianapolis, like people basically heading to their city council meetings and shutting down the possibilities of data centers being built. And hopefully like things trend towards the positive, although who knows these days. But yeah, like this was just like so fantastic to me. The only, like, to me, I rated this book a 4.5 stars because it's practically perfect. The only thing to me that like drags it down quite a bit is that she does try to get into some of the messiness around OpenAI and Sam Altman as a CEO. The very beginning of the book opens with the story about how Sam Altman was ousted as CEO and then eventually gets reinstated as CEO, which I remember hearing about very vaguely, but I didn't like pay super close attention to. And so that's how she sort of kicks things off. And then in a later chapter, she starts delving more into Sam Altman as a person and how he got to where he is now. There's like some messiness with like his personal life. And then she also gets into sort of like the messiness behind like him as a CEO and what was going on at the company and the accusations that were held against him and stuff like that to get him fired and how he ended up, getting reinstated and stuff like that. And like, while that stuff to me is like an important piece to the puzzle, and it definitely like makes sense why it's part of this story because it's a very significant part of like OpenAI, like Sam Altman as a person, like all of that like makes a lot of sense and just sort of adds to the fact that you can't really trust what he's saying and what the company is saying and things like that. But like that part of the book just felt really dragged down in my opinion. I think it's partially because there's a lot of players involved and she covers it in a very like short span, like it's only about like a chapter or two of the book, and so there's like a lot of details and it's like a very messy story. And obviously like Karen Hao doesn't know the full extent of like what happened. Like she's relying a lot on these sort of secondhand, thirdhand accounts of what was going on. And obviously like Sam Altman and OpenAI aren't really talking to her either. And she even like openly addresses that, how she had flights out to like talk to OpenAI and like things changed very suddenly and they became very cagey and closed with her and things like that. So like it all like makes sense, like why she included that information is important, but it is the one part of the story that I feel got really draggy to me and really just knocked down that half start because I don't know if I care as much about like the drama within the company. I'm sure other people might enjoy that a little bit more, but to me just like AI and OpenAI, like from its conception it had like very large ideals and very what feels like moral ideas about what it could do to help in this world. And then it very quickly became about the millions and billions of dollars and the power that comes with like being one of the top companies in the United States and in the world potentially. And again, like I said, to me, I fall into the very extreme end of like, I don't use AI at all if possible. I avoid it as much as I possibly can. But one of the things that Karen Hao also does at the end of the book is show an example of AI used in a, small scale, as ethical as possible sort of way that I thought was actually really beautiful and like provided some level of hope to a book that I feel like can get very I don't know, down, I guess, on the world as it exists right now. Like, it feels almost like these companies are impossible to take down, and like, you know, it feels almost like the things that are happening are inevitable, which, you know, is not true. And like, again, the analogy to empires I think is very apt in that way as well, because, you know, it seemed inevitable that the British Empire would just like be there forever. And now it's not. And like, it feels like a lot of times when these empires are taking hold of the world, it feels like it feels impossible to imagine a world without them existing. And again, now we've gone far enough that we've seen all these empires fall, and the world still exists. And so I really like the fact that she makes the analogy to empires, but then she also shows a world where AI is still used in a very specific way for good, and shows like just one of the possible ways that AI can be good. Like, AI doesn't need to be this thing that like has no ethics behind it, is used for evil more than good, and all of these different things. And I thought that was also just like a really beautiful addition to the book that provided a little bit of hope and happiness in the end, because like Karen Hao herself, even, you know, there's a bit of a Pandora's box situation where it's like AI exists now, and so it's impossible, or it feels impossible, to go back to a world without AI ever again. And so if we're moving forward with this technology, what could we possibly do um, to make it so it's as like ethical and equitable as possible? So yeah, it's just in my opinion, a really, really well done book. I think that just like it's written really well, so even if you're walking into this book without a lot of knowledge about the technology, or just like a very cursory knowledge of the technology, that the information is very accessible. Like, the hardest thing for me to be able to understand is basically like the structure of all these companies and who all of these different people are who are on the different boards and whatnot. But yeah, it feels almost like this should be required reading in 2025 with how much AI is being pushed, and just seeing how companies are just like needlessly adding AI to their websites and to their apps in order to get funding from investors and make it look like they're doing something progressive with their stuff, and just trying to almost keep up with the Joneses in terms of like technology and stuff like that, even though these technologies are underdeveloped and oftentimes creating more hiccups than and more hurdles than actually helping their customers and consumers. So yeah, I don't know, this was just like so well done. Like, it would also be, I feel like, a really great book to read with a group of people, because I'm sure like people have like varying degrees of experiences with AI in general. Like, it's interesting to have the conversations with people who use AI casually, whose jobs are integrating AI. And, you know, again, like, I don't think that it needs to be all bad, but at the same time, it's like one of those things, kind of like fast fashion, that you see like the potential good, but it's like, at what cost? At what cost are we getting these conveniences? And a lot of times it's people in Western worlds and richer countries who are benefiting from these technologies, but there are parts of the world that are suffering at that cost. I feel like between reading this book and reading like Cobalt Red at the beginning of the year, my attention is becoming more and more focused on the privileges and conveniences that were given in this country, in the Western world, and the richer countries, that are coming at the significant expense of other people. And I just want people to reckon with them a little bit more than they currently